afternoon. I want to welcome you to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Sunday, January the 21st, 2024. I want to first start off by wishing everyone and hoping that everyone is having an excellent weekend, should I say, and getting ready for a new week. Today's topic is why location, where you go matters. What team you go to matters. What do I mean by this? Now, I'm going to highlight three quarterbacks, actually, because four played yesterday. CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love. And I'm going to say this. This is why location matters. Because really, all four quarterbacks is benefiting from their location. What do I mean by this? CJ Stroud was fortunate to be drafted to have a rookie head coach, but more importantly, an innovative offensive coordinator who understands how to utilize what CJ does best. He's a mobile quarterback. They don't really have a very good running game, but he found a way to utilize Stroud's legs as well as his arms. And I mean, the young man is uber talented. You can see it. He's, to me, I want to see another year, but he's becoming one of the top quarterbacks in the league. You could just see the talent. Then there's a guy by the name of Brock Purdy. Now, if you watched last night's game, he struggled, and he struggled mightily. And you saw why he's a seventh-round draft pick, folks. He was the last pick. He was known as Mr. Irrelevant. Mr. Irrelevant is known when you're in the NFL, when you're the last pick of the draft, which is the seventh round and whatever the number is, the draft order. But when you're the last pick of the seventh round, which is the last pick in the draft, you're known as Mr. Irrelevant. If he went to any other team other than the 49ers and maybe the Rams, he would be a failure. You wouldn't even hear about him. Because why? The system that he's in matters. The players that they have around him matters. You take one or two of those players off, he's not the same quarterback. He doesn't play well. I found this out yesterday. Excuse me. He doesn't play well in elements. So there's a reason why he was the seventh pick, the last pick in the draft. And you saw it on display last night. Now, the only difference was when there was a play that had to be made, he made them, and that was him and Christian McCaffrey. That was ultimately the difference in the game. Now, let's take Jordan Love. Jordan Love, if he went to any other team other than Green Bay, he probably fails. Because why? First of all, see, Green Bay has a system where they're going to draft a guy or trade for a guy because they traded for Brett Favre. Then they drafted Aaron Rodgers with the 24th pick in the first round, I think in 2004, something like that. And he had to sit for a few years. Then they went and repeated that same formula just a few years ago when they drafted Jordan Love. And everybody was shocked. How could you draft Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers is coming off MVP or having like an MVP type year, and this is still Aaron Rodgers, one of the best in the game, in the history of the game? You use a first-round pick on Jordan Love. But Jordan Love had to sit a few years, where in most teams, no, you're going to play right away when you get drafted in the first round. But the Packers is like, no, we'll sit you for 3 years. You're going to learn behind the best, and you're going to become one of the best. And now you're seeing the progression of Jordan Love, where if he went to another team where the talent is not as good and they have less patience, he would probably flame out. Then that takes me now to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is about to become a two-time MVP. Two-time MVP, most valuable player. Because he won one in 2019 and he's about to win one now. Folks, every two-time MVP, go back and look at the list. They all have one thing in common. They have that gold jacket at the end, which means they become what is called a Hall of Famer. So when they announce Lamar in about 2 weeks, because they usually make the announcements the week before the Super Bowl or something like that. They give out the postseason's award like the week before the Super Bowl. So it's in about 2 weeks. because next week is the divisional round. And he's pretty much certain to win his second MVP, which means in the future, folks, he will be wearing a gold jacket because every other two-time winner of the MVP, league MVP, has won a gold jacket. So he's going to get one too. Now you would say, well, look how successful he is. Yes, because you know why? I want to show you something. This is why I say where you go matters. You go to the wrong team. Let's say, and everyone knows I'm a Jets fan. Now, I get very angry when other people criticize the Jets, but I can criticize the Jets. Unless you're a Jet fan, you're not allowed to criticize the Jets. That's just the way it works. You know, it's like family. I can criticize family, but you being an outsider better not criticize family. You know how that works. Well, anyway, let's say he went to the Jets. The Jets drafted Sam Darnold that year. If he went to the Jets, he's not having the success he is having now. He's not going to be no two-time MVP. How do you know this, Jermaine? You know how I know? Number one, the Jets have a bad history of developing quarterbacks. Number two, they would have tried to make him into something he wasn't. Because, see, most teams, and see, Dan Orlovsky, and I appreciate Dan. He works for ESPN and he's on First Take, and he probably won't be on there too long because he said something he should not have said. Now, Dan Orlovsky, who doesn't look like me, and you'll understand what I'm saying. You know, I'm trying not to get banned. He said, and I quote, go back, and as a matter of fact, when you get a chance, go back and pull up Thursday's edition, this past Thursday, which was the 18th, I believe it is, 18, 19, 20, yes, the 18th. Go back and pull up that episode of First Take about Lamar Jackson. What he said was spot on. It was the unspoken truth that he knows his people speak, but they will not say it publicly, but they say it amongst themselves. And then they disseminate it to the talking heads to further push the narrative. Here's what Dan Orlovsky said, but I want you to go and pull it up for yourself so you can see. Lamar Jackson wasn't supposed to be doing what he's doing and looking the way he looks. What did he mean by that? Well, before Lamar Jackson, there was Michael Vick. Vick did a lot of the similarities, same thing. There was Cam Newton, a lot of similarities, same thing. Well, what's the difference? Vick, Cam never threatened the system. They looked the part. Matter of fact, before Cam Newton got drafted, the owner at the time of the Carolina Panthers, because they got a new ownership now, but the owner there at the time asked Cam, do you have any tattoos? Now, what does that have to do with football? Well, to these old curmudgeons, that matters. Because they want you to look the part of a franchise quarterback. You're representing my franchise. And I want my franchise quarterback to look, talk, and act a certain way. Well, guess what? Lamar Jackson doesn't look because he got tattoos all over the place. He definitely doesn't talk very well. I'm just speaking truthfully. He's not a great talker. Okay, he might not use proper English, or he might not be well spoken the way they want him to be. And then his hair, and this is basically what Dan Orlovsky was saying, without saying it. He said when he says he doesn't look like a usual, in other words, the NFL have accepted the black quarterbacks who look like me, but you have to look and act a certain way. And all the other previous black quarterbacks have fallen into that camp, except Lamar. Lamar wears wildly creative. In other words, if I was a GM or an owner, I would hold it against him. I'm just going to be honest with you because I do want the leader of my franchise to look a certain way. Because, we all have, certain perceptions that how we want people to look and act and respond. We're just going to keep it real. Okay? In other words, if you show up to a job interview looking like Lamar, chances are you're not going to get the job. At least not at no high-level type job. Let's just keep it real. Especially when he speaks. Thank you, but no thank you. It is what it is. So there is a lot of prejudice and things being used against him. This is why you see a lot of pushback against a guy like Lamar. Because what Lamar is doing is no different than what Steve Young did. Steve Young said it himself. I was Lamar Jackson. I was Mike Vick. I was Justin Fields before these guys. And yes, Steve Young said this. So why did I say if he went to the Jets, he's not doing what he's doing today? Because the Jets were just going to try to turn him into being a pocket quarterback, though you don't have the talent to be not that he doesn't have it, but you don't have the talent around him for him to be a pocket quarterback. But what did Baltimore do? At the time when they drafted him, he was the last pick, the 32nd pick in that draft, 2018 draft. What did Baltimore do? Because at the time, Joe Flacco was the head coach. The quarterback. Marty Mortonwig was the offensive coordinator. Now, why does this matter? Marty Mortonwig doesn't run a system that caters to a guy like Lamar. He runs a system that caters to a guy like Joe Flacco. That's why when I said to my dad earlier today, when we disagreed on it, but I know it was not maybe today, it might have been yesterday. But the system matters. I don't want quarterbacks who diametrically oppose in the same locker room. Because if one goes down, I need a guy who can step in and do the same thing, similar to what the guy who's starting is doing. I don't want to have to tear up my entire playbook. And I use that concept because of Baltimore. Baltimore understood this. So at the end of the season, well, first of all, Flacco, quote unquote, got hurt. So now they put in Lamar Jackson. They go on a 6-game run. Lamar is outstanding, at least with his legs, not so much with the arm. But Baltimore didn't really have a great passing attack to begin with. So what did they do? At the end of the season, when they lost to the San Diego Chargers, and it was San Diego at the time, and I wish they were still in San Diego, but that's another story for another day. That's neither here nor there. So what did they do? They let go of Joe Flacco. They said goodbye to Joe. But they also got rid of Marty Mortonwig. And everybody said, well, why would you get rid of a coordinator when Lamar Jackson, who's the new guy, is having some success under him? Look who John Harbaugh hired. The same guy who worked for his brother, Jim Harbaugh. Now, why does that matter? Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator when Colin Kaepernick had his success in the NFL. Colin Kaepernick and Lamar Jackson are almost identical in game. They both are very dynamic with their legs, not as much with their arm, but they can throw the football, but very dynamic with his legs, and it works. And also, Greg Roman has success with Tyrod Taylor when he was in Buffalo. Buffalo made the playoffs a year before Josh Allen got there. Because why? Greg Roman. Because see, he knows how to utilize those mobile quarterbacks. The guys who are dynamic with their legs, a little bit more so than with their arms. So they leaned into Lamar Jackson, and they never tried to change Lamar. They didn't say, oh, Lamar, you got to, at the very least, go into cornrows, or you got to at least shave your head and look proper. They didn't go and try to take him to a speech therapist. They didn't. Oh, and then there's something else Lamar did where he broke the system, he bucked the system, which causes these folks to hate him or strongly dislike him. Besides just his game, the way he plays. He represented himself in the contract negotiations. Now, that's not a strange phenomenon in the NFL, folks, for a player to represent themselves. I remember when LeBron first, and this was in basketball, when he broke into the league and he represented himself, that put a lot of people, it upset a lot of people. How dare you bucking the system? They don't like guys who look like me bucking the system. That's why they're angry with Deshaun Watson. I'm going to get to him in a few minutes. You're bucking the system. And anytime you buck the system, it's going to be blowback. Well, wait a minute. If it's not uncommon for guys to represent themselves in the NFL, well, what's the problem? See, yes, a Richard Sherman, who was a star in the league and a future Hall of Famer, represented himself. There was no blowback. Roquan Smith, who's the linebacker of the the Baltimore Ravens, who's a star linebacker along with Patrick Queen. They're two of the top linebackers in the game for the Baltimore Ravens. Roquan Smith negotiated his own deal. You hardly didn't hear a peep from the media or from the NFL people saying you needed an agent. But when Lamar Jackson said, I'm not hiring an agent, my mother is going to basically be my agent, which means she representing me. Whoa, that did not sit too well. And she's not the first mother to have represented her son. You heard of a guy by the name of Eli Apple who was drafted by the Giants, who is now, I think, with the Cincinnati Bengals? And he's decent, nothing special. His mom's represented him, if I remember the story correct. But there was no pushback, no blowback. But why Lamar? Because why? Lamar plays the quote-unquote most important position in the sport, and the most seen position in the sport, which is the quarterback. They don't want quarterbacks doing that. Because why? First of all, when you represent yourself, you're taking money away from these agents, most of them who don't look like us or look like me. You're taking money out of their pockets. And anytime you start taking money out of people's pockets, they're going to be very upset. They're not going to take too kindly to you. And you're doing your own thing. See, Lamar is doing his own thing. And that is what is angering a lot of people who don't look like me. And see, so this is why you're getting a lot of the haters. This is why, yes, Lamar's going to have to win a Super Bowl to quiet a lot of those haters. And even then, they'll still move the goalposts. Well, you say, well, what does this have to do with Deshaun Watson? Deshaun Watson unwittingly stepped into a lion's den. What do you mean? When he had the temerity, the audacity to demand a trade. Now, he was a superstar quarterback at the time in Houston. He was C.J. Stroud before C.J. Stroud. You being a person looking like us, and first of all, you never saw a superstar quarterback in the history of the game, at least not in the modern history of the game, ever demand a trade before their prime or even in their prime. Never demanded a trade, say, I will not play another snap for this team. Deshaun Watson was the first to do it, and I said then, there's going to be a blowback for it. That's why you saw all those so-called, quote-unquote, allegations against him. There was no allegations against him until he did what he did. Then about a month or two, now that's when all these so-called allegations came out. So yes, what you're saying, Jermaine, is that if he didn't request out of Houston, you would have never heard about it? That's exactly what I'm saying. You would have never heard about those allegations or with those masseuses if he never requested out of Houston. But when he did that, he inadvertently touched the third rail. Now, I will say this. I would have told him, if you're going to do that, you have to be so squeaky clean, they couldn't even find a piece of dirt on the ground, or else they're going to use it against you. And so now, so they're using that against Deshaun. And then once the media backlash came against Deshaun, they expected the commissioner to put him on the commissioner's exempt list, which means you get paid, but you can't play. And they pretty much, when you're on the commissioner's exempt list, that's a nice way of starting to usher you out of the league, or you're going to be in some serious trouble. He never got into no real serious trouble because the league knew that those were, preposterous accusations against him. They knew that. That's why they didn't really go after him the way you would have thought that they would have. And not only that, you know who also didn't go after him? The women's group. And what is the most powerful group in this country? Women's. Outside of the LGBTQ, women's is the most powerful group in this country. When they speak, people listen. It's just the way it works in this country, here in the United States of America. Okay? Notice that they didn't come after him like that. Okay? See, take a Michael Vick. Vick would have been finished after that dogfighting if he didn't align himself with Peter. If he didn't do the work he did after he got out of prison, he would have never been able to get back in the NFL because why? Peter is another powerful group. And you can't have these powerful groups against you. No, teams, no, no, the league don't like that type of negative press, negative publicity, no matter how talented you are. Take a Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger was almost kicked out of Pittsburgh. People don't know this stuff. Ben Roethlisberger was always, and I know I'm on a little tangent right now, but I'm getting back to it. You're going to see why I'm saying what I'm saying. Ben Roethlisberger almost got kicked out of Pittsburgh. Why? Because he was accused of rape, not once, but twice. Not once, but twice. He was accused of rape, something far more serious and sinister than what Deshaun Watson was accused of. But yet, more people had hatred for Watson than they did for Ben Roethlisberger. But what did the league force Roethlisberger to do? Get married. You think Roethlisberger wanted to get married when he did? No. Guy was a player, playboy, player. He liked young girls. But they basically said, look, you're going to get married and you're going to settle down or else you're out of here. And when they mean out of here, they're not talking about just out of Pittsburgh. They're talking about out of the league too. Because remember, this NFL machine or these sports machines, regardless of leagues, these are cogs. They're going to go on with or without you. Okay? There was a league before you. There'll be a league long after you're gone. So don't ever think you're bigger than the league. You're not. You're making millions. They're making billions. Just know the difference. So anyway, so Deshaun Watson had 4 teams he could have gone to. It was Cleveland, because there was only 14. There was more than 4 teams that wanted him, but Houston only made an agreement with 4 teams. Cleveland, New Orleans, Atlanta, and Carolina. So those were the 4 teams. The first team he eliminated was Cleveland. The next team was Carolina. So now it was down to New Orleans and Atlanta and the word, and either one he would have actually been better off going to. Being really honest with you. Why? Because those are cities who a lot of the people look like him and I, if you understand what I mean. And if you look into those stands, a lot of those people look like him and I, if you understand what I mean. Instead, and again, I understand why Deshaun did it. And I can't say he was wrong for doing it. But when Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, broke protocol and basically gave gave Deshaun Watson a blank check and said, okay, bro, here's going to be a fully guaranteed deal. $230 million. And you can best believe when he did it, he didn't give Deshaun time to wait to give him an answer. Like, oh, let me sleep on this. Let me ponder this. No. Because I'm putting myself as Jimmy Haslam. If I'm going to give you a record-breaking deal, and it's record-breaking in more ways than one, because the only other quarterback who has had a fully guaranteed deal was Kirk Cousins. Okay? But Kirk never had the length or the amount like what Deshaun was getting. So I'm giving you a record-breaking deal on 2 areas, length and amount. I'm going to want and demand an answer right then and there, yes or no. I'm not going to give you an option to take it so where you can now go to Arthur Blank and see if you can get it from out of him. Because what you most likely would have. So then now he went to Cleveland. Here's the problem. Cleveland he's been there for 2 seasons. The first season he missed 11 games due to a suspension. It was only going to be 6, but because of the public backlash, the league pushed it to 11. So he missed 11 games. So that means there was only 6 games left. So what do you expect a guy who hasn't played for 2 years to, he's going to be rusty. But Cleveland wanted him to be great from day one, and that just wasn't going to happen. So he was okay for those 6 games. Nothing good, nothing bad. But then they said, okay, this year they was going to expect a lot more, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. This is why I say where you go matters. Because why? They didn't have the love for Deshaun like Houston did, or like New Orleans would have did, or like Atlanta would have had, where it's more of a city that looks like you and I. And the people in those stands look more like you and I, if you understand what I mean. Instead, he went to cold Cleveland, because notice the only other teams that was in the mix were Southern teams, because he's from the South, from Georgia. So, and Cleveland was the only cold weather team he was considering. Pittsburgh was not in the question because they had Ben Roethlisberger and stuff like that, so they weren't in the question. But Cleveland was the only cold weather team because why? They had a ready-made defense, and he could win right away. At least that's what he thought. But now the pressure is on him because why? They're using that deal against him. Then he goes, he was okay this year. He has an excellent fourth quarter against Baltimore, the last team that actually beat Baltimore when it mattered, when they had Lamar Jackson playing, when Lamar Jackson was starting on his MVP run. Cleveland was the last team to beat him. Deshaun Watson, that fourth quarter, you saw the old Deshaun Watson in that fourth quarter. But unfortunately, that was the last quarter he played. Because why? He had to have shoulder surgery afterwards. He was playing with a torn shoulder in that fourth quarter. And he was going to try to play the remainder of the season. But the doctor said, you do that, your arm will fall off. You risk your arm falling off. And the team and Deshaun couldn't take that risk. Too much money at stake. So anyway, they just fired their coordinators, their offensive coordinator, their running back coach, and another coach. And you say, well, wait a minute. This is a team that got 11 victories without won 11 games. Remember, Deshaun won 4 of them. See, and this is another thing. Look, Deshaun won 4 of those games. So out of the 11, Deshaun won 4. Walker, he won 1 or 2. DTR won like 1 or 2. Okay, so Deshaun won 4. Walker won 1. DTR won 1, and Flacco won 5 games. So they brought Flacco in. Now all of a sudden they want to give Flacco all these flowers. Oh, how great he's playing. Yeah, he's throwing for 300, 350 yards a game. Yeah, he's averaging like 3 touchdowns a game. But what they conveniently and quietly left off was that he was throwing around 2 interceptions a game. And I already mentioned this in a previous video. But there's a reason why they gave Joe Flacco all his flowers. Because why? He was anti-Deshaun. Not he didn't like he was against Deshaun, but he was not. They don't look at him like the way they look at Deshaun Watson. They're going to expect a lot more for Deshaun because why? That contract and also what he was accused of. So there's a lot of people that don't like him. So this is why I said where you go matters. He might have made a mistake going to Cleveland. And I got nothing against Cleveland, the city or something like that. I got to know of a few people, there, on shows and stuff like that I wouldn't have even bothered, or in the media I wouldn't even bother dealing with or even knowing about if he did not go to Cleveland. But he made a mistake going to Cleveland. I think he would have been better off going to Atlanta or New Orleans, where it would have been a much more friendlier environment for him, if you understand what I mean. Then it brings me now to Justin Fields. Justin Fields is a lot like Lamar Jackson. And those who knows any about sport and try to push back, I'll just say, do your homework. And I'm going to give you a little pop quiz. In the history of the NFL, which quarterback has the most rushing yards in a season? Or should I say, name the top 5 quarterbacks who have the most rushing yards in the season? Guess who's on that list? Lamar's on that list not once, but twice. Mike Vick is on that list. But guess who also is on that list? And who's second overall in rushing for a quarterback in a single season rushing record? Who was second overall? Justin Fields. So that means Justin Fields can do a lot of what Lamar can do. They both can run and they both can throw. Why is Chicago and Justin struggling while Lamar is succeeding? Remember when I said it go back to Baltimore leaned into who Lamar was and didn't ask him to be something he wasn't? That's why they gave him Greg Roman. And now that they went and put more talent around him, they upgraded the personnel around him, particularly the wide receivers. That's when now Todd Monken could come in and now give him the passing game that takes him now to that next level, where Todd Monken wouldn't have been as effective 3-4 years ago because they didn't have the personnel to pull off what he was looking to do. That's why they got rid of Marty Mortonwig. Because why? Marty wasn't or couldn't or wasn't designed to lean into Lamar's talents the way a Greg Roman was. So Greg served his purpose. So Justin Fields, after last year, he had the second most rushing yards by a quarterback in the history of the game. In the history of the game, only Lamar Jackson has more rushing yards in the history of the game than Justin Fields. What did the coordinator do? And I'm talking about for Chicago. Oh, excuse me. Luke Getsy, who came out of that quote unquote Green Bay system. Well, let's have you be a pocket passer like an Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love. Well, why would you do that? You don't still have the wide receiving personnel to pull something like that off. Why didn't you just lean into his running ability? And how do I know that he didn't do that? Justin Fields said it himself 4 games into the season, folks, that they have him playing robotic. They don't want him leaving the pocket. Why would you tell your quarterback not to leave the pocket? If Baltimore had did that, let's say Baltimore would have said, Lamar, you can't leave the pocket. You must stay in the pocket and throw from the pocket. Lamar's not that good of a quarterback, folks, to do that. You don't have, especially if you don't have the talent around you. You setting him up to fail. And that's what Chicago did. They set him up to fail. This is why I'm saying location matters. What Fields needed to go was to a team that's going to say, you know what? This is what you do best. Let's lean into it. Now they fired their OC afterwards, and they didn't have nothing complimented. Usually, when they fire a guy, they'll get to give you the standard. We thank you for your contributions. You know, we like what you've done for us, but it was time to move on. We wish you well, you and your family well in your future endeavors. That's usually the standard line or something to that they give you. They didn't even give Luke Getsy that. That's how bad that those people wanted him out of the building. And it wasn't just the players. Because anytime the GM and anytime the players got to tell you, yo, bro, let me do what I do best. That means you're trying to force your system onto the player rather than adapting your system to the player. That's bad coaching. But I knew this was going to happen. Why do you think I was very upset when they went and hired Matt Eberflus? Or Flusy, or Flus as he's known in Chicago. Because why? A first-time head coach when you could have gotten Jim Caldwell, who knows something about dealing with a Lamar Jackson. Because he's dealt with every other type of quarterback and been successful. And here's another player. Patrick Mahomes is about to be a Hall of Famer, or he's a Hall of Fame player, should I say. He's a Hall of Fame player. You think Patrick Mahomes, he's having his worst season of his career, statistically and optically, the worst season of his career. Well, what's the difference? He has a Hall of Fame head coach in Andy Reid, so he was always there. He has the same players, offensive players, that he had when he won the Super Bowl last year. Well, what's the difference? Oh, they lost Eric Bieniemy, the architect of the guy who was actually calling the plays. You see why I say where you go, it matters? So do you really think if Patrick Mahomes had been somewhere else to, like, say, again, the Jets, you think Patrick Mahomes would be this good? No, because they would have messed these teams. Most of these teams in the NFL will do a good job of messing you up than making you or helping you get where you're trying to go. And see, they get what I call diabolical. What do you mean? Lamar Jackson was a free agent this offseason. Now, there was at least 10 to 15 teams that needed a quarterback. Easy. My Jets being one of them. After the Zach Wilson thing debacle, 10 to 15 teams needed a quarterback. Atlanta being one of them. Off the blank. You gonna make an offer for Lamar Jackson? No, thank you. We're good. Now, this is the same guy who went after Deshaun Watson, who's a very good quarterback. And even when Deshaun first came out and Lamar first came out, I said I would take Deshaun over Lamar because I felt he was the better quarterback the way he played the position. Because Deshaun kind of plays the position the way I like my quarterbacks to play. Not that I am against the way Lamar plays the position. I'm not. Lamar is one of the most exciting quarterbacks. Hey, because I can't be. Because why? Mike Vick was my guy. But I will admit there was other guys who played the position better than Vick, but Vick was my guy. And so I would have taken Deshaun Watson over Lamar Jackson. So Atlanta tried to go all in for Deshaun Watson. Why didn't you try to go all in for Lamar Jackson? You didn't even make the man an offer. The Jets, rather than trying to go and make Lamar Jackson an offer and force Baltimore to, because I hear this, well, you don't want to do the work for the Baltimore Ravens for them. Screw that. I'm going to make him an offer better than what Deshaun had. If Deshaun got 5 years, $230 million fully guaranteed, you know what my offer would have been here? 5 years, $260 million guaranteed, fully guaranteed. That would have been my offer. But what it was, these owners didn't want that. What? How dare you give? That's what they were upset with Jimmy Haslam. Don't you give Deshaun that kind of a contract? So, because why? It's breaking the system. We don't really want that. Not for these type of guys, if you understand what I mean. So, instead of the Jets going after a Lamar Jackson, who's young in his prime, and you already know that he's already been a league MVP, you know what he brings to the table. What did we want to do? Go and get a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who's in the twilight of his career, who's more of a headache. And I like Aaron, but he's more of a headache than what he's become worth. We went and decided to go get a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers rather than going and try to get a 25-year-old Lamar Jackson. Now, you tell me, where does that make sense? In what world does that make sense? But nobody touched Lamar Jackson. This was a league-wide conspiracy against Lamar Jackson. Why? I think it's not only because of the contract, but how he looks and how he talks. They don't want that represent in their franchise. I believe a lot of that comes into play. They're just not going to tell you that. So what they'll say is, oh, we don't want to be doing the work for Baltimore because Baltimore was going to re-sign him. So what? Force him to re-sign him. I'm not there to help out Baltimore. I'm there to help out my team. That's why I appreciate Jimmy Haslam, even though he's like the black sheep of owners now in the NFL. They all hate him because of what he did. But if I'm Jimmy, you know what I'm like? Screw you. I'm doing what's best for the Cleveland Browns. Hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. And so, more folks, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. And we're talking about quarterbacks. And I'm going to come out with another video on how to evaluate a quarterback, or what type of quarterback you should be choosing. And we're talking about the quarterback spot. More quarterbacks in this league have failed than succeeded, not because of their lack of talent or lack of trying. Now, there's some who never put the time in. I'm not talking about those guys. The Johnny Manziels, the Jamarcus Russells. I'm not talking about those guys. The guys who never even bothered to put the time in. I'm not talking about those guys. Hell, I'm not even talking about Mike Vick, because Vick, for the first portion of his career, didn't put the time in. So I'm not talking about those guys. But the reason why most quarterbacks in this league fail, folks, and I'm talking about those who did put the time in, the work, and has the talent. The most reason why they fail is not because it didn't work. It's because it didn't work in the system that they were being forced to, or the team they were being forced to. Failed to develop them. Failed to understand what is these guys do best and have them do that. They try to force these guys to do something that they're not equipped to do or not ready to do. If Baltimore had tried to force Lamar to be a pocket passer, folks, Lamar would be along those long lists of guys who flame out of the league or don't last long, because Lamar's not the smoothest pocket passer. He's not the most accurate of guys. That's why I said if Brock Purdy went to another organization outside of San Francisco and the Rams, because they both run a similar type of system, and they got the talent to pull it off. If he went outside those two organizations, he would have failed. Hell, even the so-called GOAT, Tom Brady. And I like Tom. I call him the master of the 5-yard pass, because he loved throwing 5-yard passes. He would do that all game, all day, boom, boom, boom. But when you're the 6th round pick, you don't get many opportunities. How many 6th rounders are successful in the NFL? Or let me even better state this. How many 6th rounders even get an opportunity? But he went to New England. And if it wasn't for the Jets knocking out Drew Bledsoe, you might have never heard of Tom Brady. Brady got his opportunity, and he never looked back. He lost himself. What do you mean lose yourself? Go back and go Google YouTube, or Google up "Lose Yourself" by Eminem. He got his one opportunity, and he took advantage of it. And that's sometimes all you really need, folks, is one opportunity. And the right system and everything go right, take advantage of it. Now you become Tom Brady. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Have a good day.